The sole reason why I got into Akiba Maid War so hard was primarily to enjoy the adventures of the badass maid Ranko with a history and the newbie maid Nagomi with ambitions of becoming a maid in Akiba. But unfortunately, as per the code of when it comes to crime or war or gang themed shows, quote unquote, the path to that bright future is stained with the bloods of the innocent and a lot of thorns along the way as well. The year is 1999, and Akiba Maid War follows the heroine or main heroine, Nagisa, which would be labeled as N, right? An ambitious and aspiring maid cafe worker who lands a job in one of the maid cafes in Akiba or Akihabara, called Tontokoton. Now, in this setting, Akihabara or Akiba for short is filled with dozens of these maid cafes, a lot of which than I expected really, but it seems that maid cafes are really the dominating business or industry within this setting of the story. Not of which you'd think, since it's a maid cafe, right, there's gonna be a lot of happy bunch of them, right, a lot of smiles and just good times all around. But that is until you see their true colors, because what's going on is like the underworld, right, where there's mafia-like organizations, quote unquote, meaning that they do business not only in serving customers, but some pretty nasty stuff as well. And within this ecosystem, all of the maid cafes belong to either of the two groups. You've got the maid alien group, that of which their cafes or their maid cafes lean onto the themes of aliens and all sorts of science fiction stuff like that as well. Whilst you also have the Creature Land group, where their themes or their if you can figure out, as you can figure out from their name, their whole theme is that they are more into animals, so animal themed cafes. And Tontokoton falls into the Creature Land group, which Tontokoton is like pork or pigs, for instance, for pigs for that matter, right? But within that hierarchy, right, of the Tontokoton or the Creature Land group of maids, Tontokoton's position is at the very bottom, the lowest of the low, and that is because this whole system is determined by profits gained by that particular maid cafe subdivision group and from their popularity as well. It's something that I assume. Now, let's meet our employees of Tontokoton's cafe. First, you have the owner, or manager for that matter, the manager of Tontokoton, who somehow screws up a lot and really gets the staff, the characters wrapped up into all sorts of these crazy situations. It's become incredibly frustrating the more you watch her. It's infuriating. Her attitude is really infuriating at times. It can be, don't get me wrong, but nevertheless, she still cares a lot for her members. And then there's also Yumechi, who is the ace of the establishment, the ace maid of sorts of Tontokoton. You have Shipon, who is the gal. You have Zoya, who is the Russian. And then you have Ranko, who is she's a maid who we learn later on that she has a relationship with the head of the Creature Land group, Nagi. Now, here's where things get really interesting about this narrative, right? Now, 20 years ago, prior to the events of this story, Nagi was a young street kid who had no relatives, and she was taken under the wing of a well-respected and powerful maid in the business named Michio, right? And she wanted to raise Nagi as her successor because the entire notion of Akiba Maid War, or I guess the entire driving force behind a thriving business in Akihabara, especially in the maid cafe business, was power. So power is everything. Until Ranko arrived. Now, young Ranko and young Nagi at that time were really close with one another, so much so that they've become sworn sisters with each other. It's something like a pact between two maids that says that, hey, we are so extremely close to one another that we are like real sisters, something like that. Now, at that time, Ranko was similar to Nagomi, where her world or her whole vision or her whole perspective was that she's filled with non-violence and all that. And that sort of influence rubbed off on Michio, so much so that it actually made her turn over a new leaf for where her whole maid cafe business does not rely on violence. And that doesn't bode well for young Nagi, since she was raised at a young child, or at a young age rather, that, in order to thrive in this business, you have to become strong. You have to use violence, so to speak, because that's the way it goes, right? Apparently in this setting rather, right? And so young Nagi, whatever twisted mind or whatever thought process, decision making process that she've concocted up in her brain, she organized a plan to murder Michio, her own savior, her own, I guess, mother figure, so to speak. And so, yes, Michio was shot to death in cold blood under the rain by a young Okachimachi. I should really should memorize that. But Okachimachi was, for those of you who don't know, Okachimachi is actually the panda mascot. Panda mascot of Tontokoton. So, yeah, pretty, weird, mixed up. No, not weird, I guess. But if you know, the Panda-san's whole backstory is also kind of tragic as well. She was forced to take on this job in order to kill Michio, and of course it's none other than Nagi, who, I'm running out of ink. It was Nagi who gave her the order to kill Michio. And so now, with Michio dead, Panda mascot having a lot of regrets from doing this, Nagi taking over the business as the leader of the creature group, and Ranko is having this guilt and this, I guess, a lot of guilt, that she would have, if she were stronger, she could have protected Michio. So now you see Ranko, in the first opening of the episodes, or the first few, or the entire series, I suppose, we see Ranko as this particular person who is incredibly badass, strong, powerful. In the first episode alone, we get to see how amazing of a fighter and how violent she can be. And to think that at first she was so pacifistic, right? This whole incident then turned Ranko into knowing that, into believing that, you really need to become stronger in order to survive in this world, which is, kind of sad, really. But in a way, that's also allowed her to be able to gain that sort of strength in order to protect the rest of the staff members in the Tontokoton Cafe. It's kind of mature as well, or really good as well, that, for instance, in the episode where Ranko found out that the panda mascot was actually the one who killed Michio, or rather, she was ordered to kill Michio, then she found out that Nagi was the one who killed her. Ranko didn't lash out on the panda mascot, but instead was really driven towards making Nagi pay for what she's done. So let's fast forward to the events of this story. Now, Nagomi befriends a maid by the name of Nerula, who she's from the Maidalian group, and they became sworn sisters. But unfortunately, she died because of a Romeo and Juliet situation. The Maidalian group got dissolved into the Creatureland group after a clash between the group's heads, which started from a certain pig-themed cafe wiping out a Maidalian maid cafe subgroup, right? Tontokoton was threatened multiple times, really, but this one was really big to the point where it's really turned into this sort of one-sided war, right? And they were threatened to being wiped out because of insubordination thanks to the manager, but thankfully things were resolved peacefully. And then Ranko died from a backstab from some maid who wanted revenge, and it was not only Ranko who died, but my soul when I found out that the best girl and the best, strongest maid powerhouse had been 86th out of this story. So what more, or how could they turn this around without someone strong, or the main frontliner to fight along the sidelines, or to fight in the front lines, so to speak? And so Tontokoton was in danger again, but it was resolved when a coup d'etat of sorts occurred, with the trigger being Nagomi's speech about wanting peace in the maid cafe business. And it was quite touching, really, but unfortunately Nagomi was shot. Nagi died, Nagomi was shot, but a few years later, she still works at the Tontokoton Cafe, happily serving her customers in a wheelchair. So, sort of a Professor X situation, so to speak. I'm sorry, but you know, good thing is that she lived. She may not be at her best condition, but at her age, she still has that drive to make her customers happy. So it's all good, really. So far, none of the other members of the staff are we don't get any updates from them yet. But I guess to how I see it, if Nagomi is still alive and kicking, then I guess that's good enough for me, I suppose. While this journey, this story is truly filled with a lot of twists and turns, unraveling the past, Nagomi slowly accepting and adapting to the Akiba maid reality. The reality being there's a lot of violence involved, and the staff members of Tontokoton striving desperately to survive. It really all adds up to an ending that leaves you with I guess, a small sigh of relief. At least that's how I feel it, right? Each of the episodes clearly, in the early episodes rather, it really clearly focuses on the staff members of the Tontokoton Cafe, which also gives us an insight on the sorts of criminal activities going on in the underworlds of Akihabara. And the show really, it really keeps on reminding us that you really can't judge a book by its cover. The maid especially can be incredibly frightening if you think about it for a second, right? They can be so violent at times, really, messed up in the head, frightening, as I've said, right? But there are also times such as when Nagomi met Nerula, who signifies that there really is hope that there are maids in this industry who genuinely want to make customers happy and not only think about making profits. And I suppose that's just how businesses go, right? Or that's how it works in these scenarios, right? The reason why Tontokoton was in the bottom of the pyramid, bottom of the hierarchy, was because they are in debt, they don't contribute much to the group, and thus they are always in danger of being exterminated, right? But Ranko, in one of the episodes, mentioned one thing about this whole ordeal, right, of the hierarchy, is that all of the staff members of Tontokoton are truly wonderful maids. So why is it that they are in the bottom of the ranks in the first place, right? It makes no sense. But if you think about it again, poor management, the lazy workers, I suppose, or I really couldn't judge about the workers. At times they tend to be goofing off, at times not. But again, it depends. But really, fam, where I'm going with this is that, whether you're aspiring to be a maid, a doctor, engineer, or any worker for that matter, do you do so for the profit? Do you do it for fun, for passions, or for all of them at once, hitting all of the check marks at once? That, to me, I think is really the ideal way of looking at things. And there's a lot of debate that could go on into this matter, but to what I think, you surely shouldn't let the scary reality of life, that being in the case of this anime, that of blood and gunpowder, criminal mafia, and all sorts of that nasty stuff. Don't let those get in your way of becoming the best maid. I mean, best person you want to be. Sorry. With that being said, take care, family.